Before we start, let me clarify one thing. These slides, just a few pages for each chapter, are meant to highlight key concepts, clarify common points of confusion, and provide a few extra examples or technical details. They are not intended to cover the entire chapter, and they do not replace the required readings. Please do not limit your understanding or exam preparation to these 4 or 5 or 6 pages. You are responsible for all required chapter content, as noted in the reading instructions for each module. Normally, I post it at the beginning of each module. Okay? After this disclaimer, let's return to the main content for this chapter. The main purpose of this first page is to enrich your imagination and understanding of operations in a service setting. Operations management is usually easy to visualize in a factory, right? We can all easily imagine that. We produce tangible products and follow something like a production line. That's easy to imagine. But in service setting, however, it's often harder to imagine what operations actually look like. Now let's start with the example on the left, Disney World. Okay, Disney World. That's super service intensive setting, right? A wide range of service operation activities must be managed, such as overall capacity of the park, the hiring, training, and scheduling of a very large workforce. Transportation within the park is another operational issue, including bus capacity, scheduling, and maintenance. Okay, when we look even more closer, the operational details become even more complex. For example, Disney World in Orlando has thousands of cast members, right? And they need a lot of the costumes. These costumes require multiple sets, constant laundering, tracking, and careful planning. All of these are operational challenge that must be managed behind the scenes. Even after operations are streamlined, contingency plan remain essential. Okay, many services are outdoors, so weather disruptions are a major concern. In Florida, bad weather, even hurricanes are real possibilities, and service operations must be prepared to respond to those situations. As you can see, service operations involve questions ranging from large-scale planning to very detailed execution. In many cases, these operations can be just as complex or even more complex than those found in a factory setting. Now let's look at the photo on the right, which shows a healthcare setting. Okay, similar operations, each sessions arise here, such as determining hospital capacity, staffing level, how to schedule surgeries, and operating rooms. During service delivery, large amount of materials are consumed, right? Such as in this hospital setting, okay? Which introduce issues related to inventory management and order process. This setting also highlights how service quality is more complex because customers, or in this case, patient perceptions play a critical role, and quality is not easy to measure, right? Satisfaction is not that easy to measure. All of these issues involve deep and ongoing operations management decisions, right? You can extend this thinking to many other service industries, such as transportation, banking, hospitality, higher education, professional services like consulting, engineering, accounting, etc. Okay, so I encourage you to challenge yourself to identify the operations decision involved in those service settings. Okay. Now the main purpose of this page is to look at operations management from a process analysis perspective. When we take a process view, any operations management activity can be analyzed using the same basic framework. From this perspective, the entire process can be roughly divided into 3 major elements. First is the value-added component. In other words, what you are actually doing to change something. This is the transformation or conversion process, and it represents the core of both manufacturing and service it delivers. Second, every process has input and output. Okay, common inputs including land, labor, capital, information, materials, etc. The outputs are either goods or services. The third element is management, okay, or control, which serve as a control function. Management continuously collect information, feedback from the inputs, the transformation process, and outputs, and then use those information to make adjustments and provide direction to keep the process on track. This process view is very general and applies to almost all operations. Many related concepts are built on the same logic. For example, productivity is simply defined as outputs divided by inputs. Similarly, many supply chain management decisions are also based on this framework. When cooperation extends beyond a single firm's boundary, such as long-term partnership, strategic cooperation, or forecasting, those decisions still revolve around managing inputs, outputs, and transformation process. This is why this simplified process view is so fundamental to understanding operations management. Okay? Immediately after, let's see here, immediately after introducing this concept, productivity, right? Let me offer a bit more of the clarification. As we mentioned, uh, productivity is simply defined as output divided by input. Okay, so however, there are many different ways to measure productivity depending on what inputs matter in a particular situation. For example, if you are production line supervisor, your responsibility may be limited mainly to labor. You might manage 10 operators, where all equipment and materials, they are not under your control. In that case, productivity is naturally measured using labor input, such as units produced per labor hour. In some situations, however, the most important input is not labor, but capital or equipment. Consider a highly automated production line that is very expensive, but requires only one or two people to monitor. In that case, the key issue is how effectively that production line is utilized. Productivity may be measured in terms of machine hours, such as units produced per machine hour. If you are a workshop manager, improving the utilization of this expensive asset is likely your primary responsibility. Okay? If you are moving up to the level of general manager, the situation changes again, right? At that level, all major inputs are under your responsibility: labor, equipment, materials. In this case, it makes sense to measure multi-factor productivity, even total productivity. The output may still be measured in physical units or more commonly converted into dollar value. The total productivity, all inputs must also be converted into dollar values because you cannot directly add the labor hours to machine hours and plus some material cost in dollar value, right? So as a result, total productivity is often a unit-free ratio with dollar value in both the numerator and denominator, okay? Another concept I want to clarify is efficiency. Efficiency, okay? We often say that the productivity is a measure of efficiency. Here, we are using the terms in a general, everyday sense. In practice, productivity can be used for many purposes beyond efficiency, such as comparison, such as benchmarking, such as evaluating performance, etc. However, in the operations or manufacturing context, efficiency sometimes has a more specific meaning. Productivity as output divided by input does not restrict how improvement is achieved. You might improve productivity by keeping inputs the same, but you can also increase the output. That's one scenario. But you can also refer to improvement by investing in a totally new and more expensive production line, but it raises output. Okay, so just talking about productivity, this concept, it does not really restrict you to one or the other. But in contrast, efficiency, okay, efficiency in operations management often implies working with given resources. That is why I use the image of a single machine as a metaphor. If you have one machine, one operator, limited space, and fixed materials, the question becomes how can you produce more output with what you already have? Many concepts in just-in-time production or lean manufacturing are built around this idea of efficiency. So when you encounter the term efficiency, it is important to pay attention to the context in which it is being used. Okay? Now let's clarify the difference between service operations and manufacturing operations. We all know that the service sector represents a large portion of the US economy and accounts for roughly 80% of the workforce. Even from our daily experience and intuition, it is clear that service processes differ in important ways from traditional manufacturing. Okay? Think about both settings using the same process view. Any process view have their inputs, they have their outputs, and in the service setting, however, the output is delivered directly to the customer. So output is a customer experience, okay? Such as a customer's car is repaired, a customer's banking need is fulfilled, or a meal is served. Each output is experienced immediately and directly by the customer. The first key difference is that the services cannot be inventoried, right? In a manufacturing setting, companies often produce in advance and hold inventory. In services, this is not possible. You cannot store a car repair, pre-produce a dining experience, or inventory a banking service. As a result, inventory is essentially absent in service operations. Because inventory is not available as a buffer, capacity management becomes much more important in service industries. Services must be delivered on site at the moment that customer need them. Capacity, not inventory, is a critical resource. While inventory may still matter in manufacturing, in service setting, it largely disappears. Okay? The second key difference is that the customer is both the output and part of the input. In service processes, the output, the customer being served, directly affect the process itself. This is a fundamental distinction from manufacturing. Okay? Different customers bring different expectations, behavior, and perceptions. These differences affect how the service is evaluated and even how much customers are willing to pay. Simply put, some customers are easier to serve, while others are more demanding. This directly increases variability in service operations. One customer may complete a banking transaction in 1 or 2 minutes, while another may take 10, 20, or even 30 minutes for the same service. As a result, decisions about standard service times, resource allocation, process design become much more complex. In summary, service operations differ from manufacturing in two major ways. There is no inventory, and the output, which is the customer, is also part of the input. Because of these factors, service processes tend to have much higher variability in performance, resource usage, and even quality assessment. Okay? In this textbook, a detailed example is introduced in this chapter. If you remember, you can remember it's a fictional operation called Pizza USA. Here, I want to, expand that example a little bit because pizza is a great way to illustrate not only service operations, but also a wide variety of business models. And as a result, the many different operations process that can exist within the same industry. Okay. When we talk about pizza services, a few typical setups immediately come into mind. Starting at the bottom left. Okay, so we have the frozen pizza business. In this case, pizza is produced in a factory, stored as inventory, sold through grocery stores, and customers buy it from the freezer and prepare it themselves. This is still a pizza business, but it operates very much like a traditional manufacturer. Okay. At the other extreme, shown on this bottom right, we have a sit-down restaurant. Customers enter the restaurant, place orders, customize their pizza, and often order some other items on the menu. The pizza becomes part of a highly customized, integrated dining experience. This is very different service and, service and operations model, right? Between these two extremes, we see more subtle variations. For example, on the top right corner, it shows a quick service but highly customizable pizza model, such as mode pizza, right? MOD pizza. Customers move through assembly line style ordering process, make many customization choices, wait only a few minutes, and then receive their pizza. This model combines high customization with relatively low cost and high efficiency. The final example is even more specialized and is particularly relevant to college campuses. In this setting, how the pizza is cooked may be less important than how quickly and affordably it can be delivered to students. Efficient delivery systems such as fixed delivery routes combined with smart apps and location-based notifications or even robots become a key part of the operational process. Overall, this page shows that even for what appears to be the same business, pizza, there are many different operations alternatives. Each model solves the same basic problem in a different way, using a different combinations of service design, process structure, and operational priorities, right? Build upon the pizza example from the previous page, I now want to use the same context to introduce the overall structure of this course and the textbook. The title of this page is Major Decisions at Pizza, but the framework applies far beyond pizza. In the textbook, these major decisions are organized into 5 categories: process, quality, capacity, inventory, and supply chain. Together, these 5 elements form the core structure for analyzing operations management decisions. Within each category, there are multiple configuration choices. We have already saw this on the previous page. For example, under process, we might ask how pizza should be produced or distributed. Under inventory, we might ask which ingredients need to be replenished, when they should be reordered, and in what quantity. You can easily imagine similar questions for capacity, quality, or supply chain decision. The key point here is not any single decision, but the structure itself. These 5 elements, process, quality, capacity, inventory, and supply chain, they are universal. They apply across industries and across virtually all operators, operations management scenarios. Okay? So not just pizza. If you look ahead in the textbook, you will notice that after the first module, which focused on strategy and overview, where we are right now, we are in this first module right now. But all the remaining content are organized exactly around these 5 categories. They become the 5 modules. These are the chapters related to process, quality, capacity, inventory, and supply chain. Usually 2 or 3 chapters for each of the area, for each of these 5 modules. This highlights the power of this framework. When someone says they have planned their operations well, a very natural follow-up question is, have you planned effectively across all 5 of these dimensions? Have the key questions in each category been addressed? Throughout this semester, both the course structure and the textbook follow the same structure. Okay, we will keep returning to these 5 categories as we move through different industries, examples, and operations decision. Okay, that's the end of this high-level overview or highlights of this chapter.